Greetings, friends. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. And I want to welcome you to MagnifEssence in Motion, episode number 38. Today, our topic title is The Courage to Be You. Now, that might sound like a bit of a challenging title. I mean, most people say, well, I am me. What are you talking about? And I've seen this happen many, many times. I ask people, who are you? And often I hear, I'm David, or, I'm Debbie, or whoever. And I say, thank you. Who and who are you? And the brain seems to click on in that moment. And I then hear something like, well, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, I'm an architect, I'm a poet, I'm a musician. You get all these roles that people play, the things that they have done in their lives. You get a list. It's like, I'm getting your resume. And I say, well, thank you. Now, who are you? And then before you know it, people are getting confused. And they say, well, now that I'm pulling all that stuff away, I'm not really sure. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague and my friend, Debbie Prediger. She's the founder of the Shine Leadership Advantage and a masterful strategist for purpose-driven leaders. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Debbie, you work mostly with women in leadership. Is that right?
So that's a little bit of a gray area. For years, I had a group called Empowering You Community, and it was men and women. My newest thing is women, but I still work with those same men. So
beautiful.
Sorry, it's a confusing thing, but yeah, we're leaders are leaders, but I need more women to step up into leadership roles.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for stepping up and agreeing to be on this program. I know that we're going to have a great conversation. What I'd like to do to get started is I would like to ask you to share a little bit about your story, your personal story. What was it in your life that led you to want to work with people and help them to become more authentic as leaders or just as people?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. And when people ask me about my story, I'm like, which piece? Like, I don't know if anybody else has ever felt that, but there's so many connecting dots throughout the story. But if I want to be really honest and vulnerable, it was the story of me not feeling seen or heard or valued or respected. I kind of was invisible. I just tried to fit in and not really call any attention to myself. And that worked for a long, long time until it didn't, until my body said, that's not who you really are. Mm-hmm. And we're going to help you shine your own unique light in a different way. So that's probably what I want to share today.
Right. Well, and you said it very well. It worked until it didn't. And that's often the case. I mean, I've done a lot of shadow work with people, and people have these unconscious belief systems that they try to hide away. They try to keep them in the background because they have some judgment about them being, bad or evil or inappropriate, or you choose a word, whatever the word is. And so they hide them. They hide those aspects of themselves. And what the problem, and for good reason in some cases, because sometimes, and especially when we're kids, we may have parents who really don't like certain aspects of us. And there's another reason for that, which we can go into in a little bit later. But my thing is, my parents would give me the look, that evil eye look. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself. And I would know immediately that something that I was doing was not okay. And so I would start to get the habit of trying to hide it, trying to put it back, because I wanted mommy and daddy to be happy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's true for you. So what we end up doing is we develop a strategy that we think is going to keep mommy and daddy happy, and we carry that strategy forward into later parts of our life until one day we realize, why am I continuing to do this? That's when the shadow is starting to come and it's starting to emerge into your awareness, and you're becoming more aware of it. And so consequently, you may look for some support in trying to uncover the limiting belief underneath all that manifested that whole strategy in the first place. And that's
Yeah,
what's really fascinating. Now,
it
you
is.
said you had this belief that you were not seen, you were not heard, you were invisible, as I think you said. So how did that manifest itself? How did that come into being? How did you come to that belief system?
Well, I think that I naturally wanted to please people. So I naturally wanted to feel loved.
Right.
And how do you feel loved? Well, if you're like watching what somebody needs and jumping in ahead of it and doing it for them, they're like, wow, thank you. And so through life circumstances, I had many opportunities to be the leader, to be the person that solved all the problems and created ease and grace amongst everybody, like, just smooth it out. And I got really good at it until I realized that I didn't know who I was anymore. I was just pleasing everybody else. And
Mhm.
when somebody said, what does Debbie love? I didn't know. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was about. And it really helped. That was years of training, from everything, from being a volunteer in a community to being a young child that was running my household, from being a mother that does everything for her kids. Like, it just kept moving into the next thing until it couldn't. And that's when I started, whether I was asked that question out loud or whether that question was asked to me, like my internal spirit asked me, but it was loud and clear. I don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know
Right.
why I'm here. I don't know what lights me up. I just know that I'm kind of feeding this ego by just people pleasing, by doing for others. And that was leaving me very unfulfilled and very empty, and very lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just described my own life story of 40 years in about five minutes there. That's in fact, I go into great detail about my story in my latest book. It's called The Tree of Life Mastery, and hopefully people will get a chance to pick that up. But my understanding and what I realized, I had exactly the same situation where I was doing all these things, imagining I was pleasing other people. But the funny thing that I discovered, and maybe you had discovered this too, is often they're not pleased. You know, wait, what makes you think I wanted that sort of thing? That's the kind of reaction I would sometimes get. And I've since then developed a little motto that reminds me, helpful people aren't.
Ooh, ooh, interesting.
It's a little reminder to myself that maybe they don't want help. Maybe the thing to do is to pause, take a breath, and say, hey, looks like you're having some challenges there. Can I offer you some support? It makes a whole difference when you give them the option.
Yes, and I hear you, and I think what I'm hearing you describe is if I was offering advice or coaching or support that wasn't wanted. The other thing was my life. It
Right.
was, Debbie, can you do this? I was so good at everything that it was
Right. Oh, I see.
somebody
Yeah.
asking me to do it, and I never said no to anybody. So guess what happened? My body
Right.
said, Debbie, you need to honor yourself.
Yeah. So that's a different side of the same coin. People get used to you being available to do all kinds of things, and so they just naturally count on you to do it when the time comes. And
Exactly.
and you haven't learned the word no.
And they didn't like the word no when I said it.
Right.
That's true. And hi, Lanny, it's so good to see you. But yes, absolutely. No one liked it when Debbie wasn't doing what she'd done for decades. It's like, how
Right.
dare you do that? How
Yeah.
dare you think of yourself first? And I laugh at that today because I'm always supporting women in making sure they take care of themselves first. And that starts with self-discovery of who you are and what lights you up so that you can keep that bucket filled up instead of running from an empty cup.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this idea of um I guess for me, I wouldn't call it so much people pleasing as because I didn't obviously people didn't always get pleased by what I did, but sometimes it was more trying to avoid conflict. I
Mhm.
think was more accurate. well, what's the least amount of conflict I can create by doing something here? And hopefully the least amount of conflict will translate to some form of happiness or people pleasing. I guess that's more accurate for me. And one thing I know about myself, you said that you found yourself feeling unseen, unheard, invisible. For me, it was quite different. I noticed myself becoming more and more angry over time because I wasn't getting my own needs met, because nobody was taking care of me. I was doing all the taking care. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, there's all kinds of different ways this can show up for people.
Yeah, I had a poor connection there, so I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't losing you. But yes, absolutely. That's the point. It shows up in different ways for different people, but it's all the same thing. Somewhere in the middle of it, you aren't fully shining your unique light in a way that makes you proud of who you are. That
Right.
core essence, when you said it at the beginning, it was, how do people introduce themselves? Is it a title? Is it a role? Is it that you're a mother? Is it where you live? Like, what is that? But who are you at the core of your being? What do
Yeah.
you believe? Well, how does that show up? And if there's an incongruency, if there's a gap or an opportunity for us to be more of who we already are, it's going to show up in a little bit of like, either ego is telling you you're too much, or maybe you're not enough. And so I always say, let's come back to the middle where we're truly aligned to our core being and our divine essence.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea of who are you? I mean, that's a great repeated question. I play this game with people all the time, and I play it on both sides of the fence. And what I have learned over the course of many practices of this is that there is no one answer. Or the answer is so big you can't possibly contain it in a single sentence. I see Lanny just said, I am a divine creation. Well, that's a beautiful statement to say, and it is true, right? But when you say I'm a divine creation, what does that really mean? Or if I say I am a divine, magnificent, unlimited, sovereign, spiritual being of light and love, participating in a temporary human experience, that's a long sentence saying basically the same thing.
And it's the perception or the perspective of, what does that mean? That's really what you said there, is what does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? And what does it mean when it's fully aligned and feels true to you? That's really what matters, is what feels true to you. Is there more that needs to be discovered? And we're always evolving. So it's not like you just get to this thing and you have this title or this statement, as everybody's always asking us to make these statements of like, who is Debbie and who does she serve? That's always evolving, and it's okay for that to happen. But I believe that when we ask questions like, just describe a little bit about who you are so that I can get to know your soul. That's so much more of a powerful question than somebody asking about titles and resumes and all of those things.
Right.
And I think it speaks to the title of this conversation, the courage to be you. If I feel like I'm in a room where titles and qualifications and awards and accolades is what people want me to lead with, my ego's probably going to go, am I enough to be here? But if they really want to know who I am as a spiritual being, as a light in this world, I'm happy to share that. That's completely different, because I don't have to prove to anybody that I belong here. And that goes back to why it's so important for me to help people feel seen and heard and valued and respected for who they are. I really want to know who they truly are.
Yeah. It's interesting. You've mentioned two key words that I deal with all the time, and that's ego and spirit or soul. I refer to it as ego mind because it's a conscious awareness about what is. And it's different from just mind, because mind is just, conscious awareness. That's all it is. But when the ego gets into play and it starts doing things, and it will say stuff like, you screwed up, you're an idiot, you're this or you're that, and you're all kinds of bad things. And your ego mind will say stuff like that to you until you don't allow it to say things like that anymore. And that's something that I learned pretty much the very hard way. You know, I had to find a way to silence my ego mind. And what I discovered was the way to silence it is to listen to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought, that's counterintuitive. Why would I want to listen to that kind of talk? But as I listened without reacting, without responding, I would just say, so tell me more about what that means. Why are you bringing this to my attention? What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And often that would lead to a kind of an inner conversation where it would be like I was talking to my own little boy, my own inner little boy. And
Mhm.
he's just scared, frightened. He wants to be loved, like just like any other little kid, right? And so I had to learn to love that little boy and just bring healing, loving energy and forgiveness and compassion to him. And by doing that, I was able to get the ego mind to quiet down on its own so that I could now hear the voice of my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, at first it took a while to do it, but now it's just a case of sitting down, meditating, and I'm there like almost instantly now.
Well, and I can relate to that in a little different way. What happened was I was ignoring those words, those thoughts, what you call the ego mind. We all have them, but are you listening to them and believing them, or are you listening to them and like, no, block it out, ignore it, numb it out, just pretend it's not happening? Or I like to say that that ego mind that you call it is like the bully in the room. And
Right,
so, what do we do with a bully? We have to turn around and face it and hear it. And when you do that from the observer, from that place of, I want to understand, I'm curious,
right,
why did you think that way? That's where you find the gap, that gap of, you say you want this thing, you're not willing, you're not taking action to get it. So then your brain is, ego mind is saying, see, it's not possible for you. They can have that success, you can't. And when we start being curious about this, we see the habits and patterns that kept us safe for a long time. And we
right,
see where they developed, not from a place of right or wrong, good or bad, but just like you said, that inner healing of that child that developed these habits and patterns to stay safe. And it doesn't have to be big trauma that makes a child do that. It can be the little things, it can be the looks, it can be the, I don't approve of you. We make something mean something, and then we carry that meaning into adulthood. And I definitely witness people carry it into business. They
right,
can have the most amazing story, the most amazing methodologies, the most amazing ability to speak, and they can't sell it because there's a something standing in their way that just needs to be seen, respected, and then flipped so that we can now create this life where it's sustainable and it's fulfilling and it's abundant, and we're making impact with the people that are out there praying for us to show up with our lived experience. That's really, it's that simple. And I know it's not simple when somebody's in the middle of it. When I was in the middle of it, none of it felt simple.
right,
But it really is to stop and be the observer and wonder, without making it right or wrong, without shaming or having guilt, what did I live through that makes me think this way?
right,
That makes me believe that I'm not good enough. Because I had very, very bad inner narrative, very, very bad.
mhm,
Um, and I could barely look myself in the mirror. And now when people say, but Debbie, you're, this confident person that's standing on stages and speaking, I'm like, I can only do that because I'm doing it for you. If I was doing that strictly for my own ego, couldn't do it.
mhm,
I wouldn't be able to do anything that I've done, or had the success that I have, because it's not about me.
right, yeah. Well, you've said a couple of things here that first of all, I want to really thank you for pointing out that you don't have to live through trauma to have these kinds of beliefs. I think that's really important. It's like we seem to focus in our world on this idea of trauma. You know, if you're dysfunctional in some way, then you must have had a traumatic experience in your life. No, that's not necessarily true. You could have had, the apple pie of childhoods and still have shadows that drag you down and have beliefs about yourself that will keep you from showing up fully. You don't it can happen so easily. I mean, think about this: a kid just playing around outside, and mommy gets upset and says, "No." You know, that the energy of that word "no" is so strong. It could penetrate right into the child's body, and who knows what kind of an effect it can have. But the kid reacts and says, "Oh, mommy doesn't like me," or maybe it doesn't start that way. Mommy doesn't like what I'm doing. But after a while, it might turn into mommy doesn't like me because I'm not good enough, because I'm bad, because I'm evil. Do you see? It becomes an internalized message. So it's just as serious as trauma. So I'm
No,
glad you brought that up. And
yeah.
yeah, I think all of us need to be more gentle and more loving with each other. You know, just because I haven't had, some kind of a crazy, well, let's say sexual abuse or something like that in my life. I haven't had that personally, but I know people who have. But I've had my own form of pain and suffering, and you have had your own form of pain and suffering. So,
And
yeah, I
this
just want to bring that
really
up.
speaks back to that being compassionate, right?
Right.
Sometimes as leaders, we know that we're meant to be compassionate to others. We're meant to listen and feel into it. I mean, I can feel in somebody's body when they're having a reaction or a triggered effect. So it can make me very aware, but am I remembering to be compassionate to myself, right? Am I remembering to lead myself in the same grace? That's an important thing, because I know that for a long time, when my body was shutting down and I was making it wrong and all of the things that was happening, and I was trying really hard to figure out what was wrong. I was making myself wrong because my body was failing. Therefore, I'm not doing it right. So therefore, see the whole story and the spin there.
Right.
What I needed to do is be compassionate and love my body for showing me something that my mind was trying to keep hidden. And so in order to be compassionate, that's when we listen with our full body, not just with our ears, not just with our eyes, but with our full body. And we really do start to understand at a deeper level of why we're here, what gifts we have, what brings us joy, following that joy that leads you to deeper connections and deeper meaning in life. But the biggest thing that I see happening is, and I wanted to loop back, because in the middle of all that, I kept saying, there's people that have it way worse than you, Debbie.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
can't you suck it up and get through this? So again, I was making myself wrong for what my body was trying to tell me.
Yep.
And that's where let's stop the judgment and the comparison on trauma. Oh, she has the right to feel that way. Oh, why can't she get over that? None of that exists. If anybody ever says that to you, run away and then erase that from your brain, because it's just toxic. You have the right to feel whatever you feel.
Absolutely.
And feelings is where what I was numbing down for years and years and years, till my body shut down and couldn't do it anymore. And then emotional healing is what took me out through the freedom path that got me to where I am today. Because my physical body shut down, but I didn't know there was a difference between a physical body and an emotional body and a spiritual body until I had to go find that out myself. Is I don't know if you know that story, is that I was a retired nurse. So everything I was making wrong or trying to figure it out was about my physical body. And they couldn't find anything wrong physically. So they started saying, well, it's all in your head. What that said to me, the perception that I had, that meant is that I'm crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What it really meant is it's nothing physically wrong, but there's something else that is showing up. Like you literally can't hold your head up. Your legs are not working. There was something physically wrong, but it was a sign of something wrong underneath.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how we seem as human beings, we have this disease, common disease, I call it comparisonitis. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like you can't really compare because it's apples and oranges, you know? And so what I recommend people do is go find your nearest spiritual support person and ask for a comparisonectomy.
I love that.
It's and you've said it yourself. Really, it's about having a little bit of compassion for yourself. Maybe not a little bit, maybe a lot of compassion for yourself. Why put a limit on it? Be as compassionate for yourself as you could possibly be, because actually what that does, that translates into compassion for other people anyway.
It does.
So have compassion and tell yourself there's no point in comparing because we're not the same. I mean, even if we had what appears to be the same experience, we didn't have the same experience because we were in two different places with two different mindsets, two different spiritual beings. I mean, there's no way to compare. All right. So stop that right now. That's your comparisonectomy right there. Don't do that anymore. If you're going to compare at all, compare yourself where you are now to where you want to be or where you've been, and remind yourself how far you've come.
Exactly. It's such a beautiful thing when I finally stopped comparing myself, because when I actually read a book called Judgment Detox, and I thought, I don't judge others. I'm very compassionate. I'm very, I love hearing their stories. I'm very curious. But I didn't realize how much I was judging myself. And so what happened with all of that is I recognized that here's what I think I am, and that what I think others think I am. And then here's what God or source or spirit thinks I am. And if we are all born with greatness within us, I think when I have a child and I look at that child, I don't go, oh, their hair is black and I wish it was blonde and da, 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 da. I love that child unconditionally. And I believe that God, source, universe does exactly the same thing.
Right.
Unconditional love that you can't feel until you accept that there's nothing for you to change. Just be more of who you already are. Not from ego, because who I am when I'm triggered is a completely different person than who I am when I'm healed, but come from that place of true alignment and source and let that flow through me. I was created with greatness within me. You are. Every person listening to this, start discovering your greatness. Start recognizing it, accepting it, and allowing those things that bring you joy to then ripple out and bring others joy. That's really that simple. Follow your joy and let the light guide the way. If you continue to do that every single day, you're going to not have time for the things that don't bring you joy. And you're going to see the perspective as, where's my joy gone? Oh, I'm doing instead of being. Okay, I need to come back, set, and say, what can I do in this world? Because we still have to take action. But what can I do in this world that makes me more joyful, ripples out to others' joy, and completely helps people shine their own unique light? Again, if I'm trying to make David Debbie, that's not going to work, and vice versa. We don't want robots. We want you to be unique. And I want to know what makes you happy. When we have, clients come through our Leadership Momentum Accelerator program, we spend the first 4 weeks in really picking and asking the same questions over again to find their limiting beliefs and to find out what they really desire. Because if at surface level, it's like, here's the thing I want to happen, but they're not telling you all the dreams that they haven't even spoken out loud. We need all of that to come to the table so we can take your leadership style and put you on the stages that you deserve to be on, that you don't have to earn. Those people are looking for somebody like you. Let's just connect those dots. But I need the whole you to show up so we can do that. Not just the part that you think is acceptable and that society is looking for. Let that out of your brain. I believe we're here for a reason. And I believed that your lived experiences deserves to help somebody else. They're praying for you. You're trying to find them. Let's connect those two people so that we can make the biggest impact.
Yeah, right. Beautiful. You mentioned judgment. I think judgment is another aspect of the human experience. I think we're all judging. The problem is we have given the word judgment a bad name. We have decided that judgment is bad, but it isn't. It's just having the ability to distinguish one thing from another, to be able to assess things, to be able to put values onto things, and that sort of thing. Just imagine if you had no judgment capability whatsoever. I can't imagine what that would be like. But try crossing a road if you can't judge the distance of a vehicle, coming towards you. You could say, "Oh, I can make it because I'm a spiritual being and I can just go across that." Yeah, well, that might be true, but your physical body might not like it so much. So we make judgments all the time, all of us. And even if I judge myself to be compassionate, that's still a judgment. It may be an accurate statement, but it's still a judgment. And this is one of the things that people seem to get hung up on. And don't knock yourself for having judgments. Just notice them. Notice your judgments and say, all right, what is this telling me about myself?
Yeah.
Now, I think where people make the mistake is they often think, well, I judge you as X, Y, or Z. And the reality is when I make that judgment of you, what I'm really doing is projecting an aspect of myself onto you that I may not have looked at before. So you have just given me a fantastic gift, an opportunity to look at something within me that for whatever reason I may not have seen before. Now, that doesn't mean that my judgment is false. It just means it's an opportunity for me to see something within myself. Now, that's not to say I should go around and tell you all the judgments I have about you, because then it could just be I'm just being spiteful and hurtful, and that's ego. That has nothing to do with reality. But if I notice a judgment, then I can say, oh, I just noticed that. I'm gonna use you as an example right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm good. Go for it.
I just noticed that Debbie smiles a lot. And I'm feeling a little uncomfortable because I notice that sometimes I do that too. I smile a lot when I don't really feel like smiling. What is this telling me about myself? Now, I didn't have to share that with you. I could have done that entire piece internally.
Yeah.
And all of us can learn from that if we choose to. So judgment is something that we can really benefit from if we understand the nature of it and stop judging our judgments.
Well, can I just add my little perspective into that? Because
absolutely. It's a conversation.
Absolutely understand where you're coming from, but I think it comes back to the same thing as what does judgment mean to you? What does success mean to you? Until you have defined that, then judgment could be hurting you. Because what was happening with me is judgment for me meant it was true. I wasn't observing. I wasn't discerning. I wasn't being aware. I had just made a condition because of a judgment. Right. And again, it was life's experiences helped me stay safe if I made these judgments, if I made these decisions. But I had to stop and look and go, why do I think that? What about that? Just what you said and showed us that you did internally, I wasn't doing. I was missing that whole step. So judgment was the narrative that was running through my brain, and it was my truth.
Of course.
But my ego mind isn't true. The truth lives here at the heart of who you are. Until I started recognizing that the signs in my body that were showing up as disease or pain or whatever, they were trying to tell me my truth. They were trying to tell me where I had a limiting belief or an old habit or pattern or energy block stuck. And when I could release that, I could release the old pattern, habit, or belief around it. And so in a way, it's the same thing, but I just want to be careful that each person has to discover, what does that really mean to you? And then is it true? Or is it just a belief that you have bought into because somebody told you that? That's the awareness, and that's the gift we get to give ourselves, is we get to decide what it means. But
Of
if
course.
you're unconscious of why you think a certain way, then I invite you to go in and really sit with that. What does
Yeah,
it really
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah. Well, we could have a whole conversation just on this idea of meaning,
Yeah,
because I believe, personally, I believe that nothing means anything. Everything just simply is. It just simply is. That's all it is. And meaning is something that we apply to it through our judgmental, cognitive deliberations, and you name it. It's there is what is, and then there's my story about what is.
exactly.
And the story is not the same thing as what is, although it might look like it in some ways, right? And this is what a lot of people don't really quite get. And I didn't get it for the longest time. Once I started understanding that, and I started realizing, okay, it's like this. I share this particular example with people all the time. Just go out and look at some clouds. Just go and look at them. Just look at them. Don't do anything else. Just look at them. And now ask yourself, how long before you start noticing patterns in the clouds? How long before you see a face or a flower or a lion or a whatever? How long before that happens? Well, here's what's going on. This is your mind doing what it is designed to do. It is finding patterns in the noise. But if you stop, if you notice that you're doing that, then you can pause, and all of a sudden you begin to see the clouds again. And this is what I'm talking about. There is what is out there, and then there's that little story that's going on in your head. You have to recognize the story before you can get back to what is.
Exactly. Yeah, well said.
And the same thing holds true for any story I have about me.
Mm-hmm.
It is a story. Some little particles of that story might contain elements of truth, but the story itself is not who I am. And each of us has to do that work if we want to find out the truth of who we are, so that we can stand up and just present that truth of who we are without any apology and without any concern for what other people might think.
Yes. And I want to share an example of something that I have had happen with you. And what I see often with other people is when you get to hang around people that want to see the best in someone else, they become this mirror of what's possible. And maybe you can take off your blinders, or even your, I have to be a certain way. When somebody tells you what they see in you from that perspective of grace, and we don't have to accept it as the truth, but we do have the opportunity to see it as a different light. Now, years and years ago, when we first started doing the Wellness for All program, Anna Pereira helped to create a reel of gratitude, where she went and asked people that have been to our classes to share a little bit about the person that did the class. So in my reel of gratitude, I go back and I watch it a lot. And your comment was, Debbie has this innate ability to make the you didn't say difficult, but make something big discern into something simple. She can connect the heaven and earth and make it be understandable. Now, those are not the exact words, but that's what I heard. And you helped me see something that I had never seen in myself, which I've had many, many people share that with me since in their own way. But I didn't know that was a skill set I had. I get in a room, I observe, I hear how you're speaking it, I hear how somebody else is speaking it, and I kind of create a summary of how I see it. And I didn't realize until you put it in those words that I had a gift that maybe not everybody else has. Those things that are so natural to us that we don't see. So the reason I'm saying this is really be intentional about the rooms you're in. Mm-hmm. Be intentional about whose advice you're taking about who you are and who you're not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, I think I shared with you, didn't I? Didn't I? Well, I won't say it. I won't repeat it here because I think I said it before, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes, people who have advice, they're really, and you got to think about it this way, they're always speaking about themselves to themselves, even though they're directing it towards you. This is the nature of feedback. When I share with you something about your performance, whatever, I'm only sharing my perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And five other people may have seen the same presentation and got a completely different perspective. This is something that I have learned. So anything I share with you is about me. It's about me, even though I believe you might be able to benefit from it. That's the nature of feedback. It's always about the giver of the feedback, and it may only be partially about the receiver of the feedback.
Well, it tells me a lot about what you respect and love and appreciate.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that it also opens up. In my way of teaching, I'm always teaching my students to do something like this. Ask a question where you can get feedback, not for somebody to say how great you are, but how did it transform them? What was the aha moment? What was the takeaway? Because the research I'm doing in that question is I now know what they value. I now know what stood out to them because they needed it, because that is part of the thing that they're reflecting back to me.
Yeah. I remember this beautiful metaphor that somebody created for demonstrating what it means to give feedback. And it really was a case of, here, I have this, it's a box of Kleenex or, facial tissue. I have this feedback that I'd like to offer you. Are you willing to receive it? You say yes. So I hand it to you. You now have the box of tissue in your hand, and you take one tissue out and say, maybe toss it away. Another one, put that in your pocket. Take a third one. And that's the point of feedback. You take what works and resonates with you, and don't necessarily throw away the rest of it, but put it aside because it doesn't mean anything to you now. Maybe tomorrow you'll come back and you'll look at that same box and say, there was something else in here. Let's take another look. That's the beauty of it. When somebody offers you something, you don't have to take any of it. You can just simply say thank you and be done with it. And that's it, right? But if you pause and take a couple of deep breaths and just reflect on whatever was shared with you, you may notice a little sparkle of some truth here and there. Something that's helping you to see an aspect of yourself that you might not have seen as clearly before.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, I'll tell you this, I don't know about you, but for me, anytime I heard somebody say feedback or constructive criticism, I was instantly on the defensive. Instantly on the defensive. I would be saying, oh, that's not true. This is what I was actually doing. I would go on into some defensive mode. You see? Now, I don't know. I'm sure other people have had the same experience. Maybe you have too. I don't know. But my point is, if someone comes to me now and says, I have some feedback, are you open to hearing it? Now I just simply pause, take a breath, and say, yes, I am ready to hear what you have to say. And just listen. You don't have to accept any of it. It's really important to understand you don't have to accept any of it, but you have the opportunity to reflect on any part of it and see what might be true for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that the word feedback and criticism might also have a meaning and a triggered response. And so when we're aware of that, we have to replace those words with something else. And observation is always a better curiosity, let's listen.
Right.
But anyway, I think if I go back to the courage to be you, what I would love to share with people or ask is, do you know who you are? how can you have the courage to be fully you, 100% you, unconditionally loved and accepted you, if you don't know who that is?
Right.
And it's fine to play. We're here playing a game and trying things out and seeing what works. But when you find out that you really love a certain thing, or you stand for a certain thing, or your message is about a certain thing, you have the courage to share that with others. Or are you kind of hiding that piece of you? And that's
Right.
really what I want to, not in any way of shame or blame or guilt or expectation, but just a curiosity. Because when you get to that place where you get to tell others what lights you up and what makes you uniquely you and why it matters and what your mission is, all of those things are really important, that you actually believe it and have the courage to share it.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for a number of reasons, not least getting to know yourself and being willing to stand up for that being and just simply say, this is who I am. I love me. I hope you do too. But if you don't, that's okay. You know, the thing is, when I share something about myself, I know that the more vulnerable I become, the more willing I am to share those deep personal things, the greater the spread of it becomes more universal. I think it was Sean Stevenson who said, the more personal you make it, the more universal it is, because everybody can relate to that stuff. Even if they don't have the exact same experience, they can relate to the feelings, to the way the story you made up about it. They can relate to all of that. And so when you take the risk to share the truth of your story, and you do it in a, well, maybe not a worldwide public forum, but a public forum of people that you care about and you trust, you are going to have an impact on those people.
Yeah. And can we go back and talk about sharing your story? Because I think
Absolutely.
it comes in pieces. So inside of my Be Extraordinary Women's Network, I do a 15-minute interview. And what I'm doing is I'm just sharing your extraordinariness. Every woman from all over the world of any age has done something extraordinary that led to who they are today. They've made decisions, they've taken action, they've had results. And I don't care if that's the volunteer of the local library or if it's somebody that's winning awards and standing on stages. Every woman's story deserves to be heard.
Absolutely.
What happens when they get invited is they start making up, some of them start making up a story in their own mind of how they need to be. Like, my story doesn't really matter. I got to find something about my story that's better than so-and-so's. So again, that comparison, that judgment, that fear of not being good enough. And really, it's just in an interview style. So I'm very good at pulling out their unique story that makes people curious and want to get to know this person more. But that's one form of your story, bringing hope and possibility and unleashing or unlocking chains to somebody else in the community listening. Mm-hmm. But then both of us are authors and have been in collaborative books and other books, sharing a version of your story to the public of, you don't even know who's there and who's going to read it or who would stumble upon it someday. That's another set of fear that comes up. And it's like, do I have the right to tell this story? Will this story even matter to somebody, right? So every version of your voice matters. Sometimes there's healing in getting out the life is shitty story. And sometimes there's, let's talk about the transition and the life is great. And these things I went through actually led me to here. And now I'm helping all these people. Whatever your story is, it's a piece of your story. And it's a piece of the healing that happens because through you telling your story, not only did other people get to learn about you, but you get to learn about yourself. I 100% believe that. Whether somebody's coming on my podcast or they're writing a magazine article, they're learning something about themselves, speaking it out loud in an expressed form that they may not have admitted to themselves before. And in that, there is healing.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. That is a great podcast. Did you just say you do a podcast?
I do,
Oh,
yeah.
well, I'm going to have to be a guest on your podcast now.
Well, you can't on the Be Extraordinary Women's Network because it's only for women.
Well, okay.
Sorry.
Maybe there'll be another opportunity somewhere down the road. But I think this is really fascinating. This idea of, yeah, understand your story, know your story. Don't diminish your story because it is your story. No one else has that story. And that's that comparisonitis thing I was talking about before. You may have this idea that your story doesn't have the same level of drama or something that somebody else's story has, and therefore it doesn't merit consideration. Now that's all bullshit. Every story, as you said, deserves to be heard. And every story has its own power, its own value. You have no idea who you might touch with your story. So don't be afraid of it. Just, you don't have to go out and broadcast it to the world. That's not what we're asking you to do here. We're just asking you in your own way, in whatever way you happen to show up in the world, show up as real and as genuine as you can. That's really the ultimate objective here. And don't be afraid. And if you are afraid, do it anyway.
Yeah. I create stages for people to speak on and share their thought leadership, their message, their mission. But before they get to that point, they have to have started to express their story out loud in whatever form. And as I said to you before, every time you do it, you learn more about yourself. You go through a process of accepting and loving that version of yourself. That's
right.
You take what's true and what kind of maybe came out as a reaction or a triggered thing. Okay, that wasn't the real me. Like, you move on. But one of the things that I've witnessed in all of the different communities that I have done this with, or people that I've created opportunities with, is that there is a sense of freedom that comes with it, and a sense of knowing that that version of your highest self is being expressed. And sometimes it's surprising. I have an example of, we did a book, a collaborative book, and it was called 100 Moms, 100 Dreams. And we had moms from all over the world share their mother story, right? There's some people that have a beautiful mother story. There's a lot of people that went through trauma and not having a great mother story. But who you are today and how you mother today came from what happened in the past. And so sharing these stories, when we launched that book, it became a collaboration that was so much more than a book. It was like our hearts have come together, and we learned so much about each other and what people had been through, in a way that explained how they're showing up in the world in a better way. And we became this trusted voices collective that referred each other out, right? Like, I remember one of the ladies, from me knowing her, she helped people with weight loss. Well, when her story come out and why she did this, it was very thinly connected. Like, you had to really search for the connection. But once we heard her story about weight loss and self-image and identity and all that stuff, goodness, now she could sell that product, right? We need to go back to why it matters. Why should people care about this? What part of that is who you are today? And what did you have to go through in order for that to happen? So again, if I go back to the courage to be you, if you don't know your story and you haven't gone through that awareness and self-discovery and self-acceptance stage, you're missing a piece of why it matters. And people are going to connect and resonate with you, not because of what you sell, but because they know you've been through something and you can resonate with them and you can lead them through something that they're, like I said, praying for you. They're praying for somebody to come with the answers. We don't just want a book with answers. We want somebody that's been through something so that they can guide them through it and be the bridge to the faster version, the less painful version of that transformation that your soul's looking for.
Right. You know, everything that we're saying here, I know that we have this focus on leaders and people who are running businesses and that sort of thing, but the reality is it applies to everyone,
Ever.
regardless of what you're doing. If you're just a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or something like that, and you just want to have a better life for yourself, these ideas that we're sharing are relevant to you. Now, if you don't know your story, as Debbie has mentioned, well, maybe it's time for you to grab yourself a journal and start writing. You know, start going back. What happened last week? What happened last month? You may not be able to go back to your when you were 3 or 4 years old and remember all that stuff right now. But if you start here and start gently moving yourself backwards in time, you'll start remembering things and you'll begin to understand, oh, that's why I have this belief or whatever. Journal. Buy yourself a journal and a pen. It's really important. Don't do it on a computer. Yeah, computers are great, but they're not useful for this kind of thing. Get that pen active because there's a connection between your brain and your hand. And as you're writing, first little while, it might hurt. But after a while, the pain will go away and you'll get the hang of it. Write it down. Write it down, and no one else has to see it. It's just for you.
No, I absolutely agree. And I'm going to circle back to this isn't about leaders. Absolutely. We must be able to lead ourselves first. We must be able to love ourselves so that we see our leadership potential. But every person is a leader.
Absolutely.
In my definition, you're leading yourself, you're leading your family, you're leading your inner circle, you're leading your community. There is somebody coming to you for advice on something. So when you recognize that even as a volunteer in a community that's never accepted a dime for her efforts, she is so much a leader. In fact, most organizations would love to hire that person. So right. Don't take the difference between a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or a volunteer of a community or somebody that's a circle gatherer. They're always the person that's, has the parties at their house. Those are leadership skills. And so my SHINE framework is for personal development. Yes, you can take the same structure and turn it into leadership development, but it's for the ordinary person inside of my community. It is women from all walks of life. They do not need to be business. That's why I have 2 communities, and I spoke about that earlier. My other community, Empowering You, is about business. It's about skill sets. It's about mindset of business struggles that we can have if we feel like we're doing business alone. But the other one is sharing extraordinary stories of women, bringing hope and possibilities to those that need it. And really, someday you need it, and someday you receive it, and someday you are the hope and possibility.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to say, part of the reason that people are afraid to step up is because of their fear of judgment.
Yes.
Now, here's something that's really, it's kind of ironic, really, if you think about it. Something that took me a while to figure out. But it's this simple thing. Most of the time, other people aren't judging you at all. They are too busy worried about their own lives to be thinking 100% of the time about you. So if you do decide to show up, the chances are they may judge you, but they're probably going to judge you positively because they say, wow, here's somebody who's showing up authentically. That's, what's that risk of that? If somebody really appreciates when you show up authentically, what's that going to mean for you now? Since it's a complete opposite of what you may have been worried about in the first place. So think about that and just imagine, man, if I could just touch one person. It's not about ego. It's not about stepping up and trying to be seen because you want to be famous or blah, blah, blah. None of that crap. We're talking about just being real. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. You nailed it. Visibility. I teach visibility all the time, and it is not about the stages, and it's definitely not about you pointing and saying, I'm so great, look at me. That is not visibility. Visibility is, are you visible to yourself? Do you truly know who you are and the message that you bring to the world? Because that's valuable. When we find that, that's valuable.
Right. It's very valuable. Well, we're getting up to the top of the hour here, Debbie. It's been an absolute blast sharing this space with you and having this conversation. I'm wondering if you have any final words you'd like to share, final words of wisdom, of support, of suggestion, and also share where people can get a hold of you.
Thank you so much for that. This question is always like, so what is the thing that I want to share? And I think it is really that simple. Just be you. You have to know who you are. You have to love that person that you are, and then just be that person. Be that, shine your unique light in the world. Let people see you, feel you, let them know that you care and that it matters. And more people will resonate with this. The right people will, the wrong people will just move on over, and it's all good. We don't want to attract the wrong people into our lives and then have to perform to keep them in our lives. That's not what we're doing here. And so you can just find me. The simplest thing is Google Debbie Prediger. You can see my name is written on the bottom of the screen here. That's the type. I take DMs on LinkedIn. I take them inside of my communities. But if you tell me that you've seen me on David's, that will help me understand what conversation you've heard us have, and I will point you in the right direction. Like I said, I have 2 free communities. I'd love to welcome you into those, but I also have many opportunities to work with me. And I think that for me, it's always what's the right spot and the next aligned move that's going to get you to where you want to go. And that's really what I call the Shine Leadership Advantage. We have a whole ecosystem of offers and people that I work with and great partners that I have partnered with. So thanks, David, for this beautiful opportunity to have this discussion with you.
Well, and yes, you're welcome. And thank you, Debbie, for being here. It's taken a while for us to make this happen, but I'm grateful that you were able to show up. And folks, I just want to thank those of you who showed up on the live presentation. That's really, I'm grateful for you for doing that. And also for those of you who are watching the recording, I want to thank you as well. And I would like to just remind people that every episode of this program, MagnifEssence in Motion, is available on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So you can go and check them all out there. And also, I would just like to remind you of my life mastery mantra. It's a 3-sentence mantra that you can practice and learn and just use at the beginning or at the end of your day. It's 3 sentences. It goes like this, real simple. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you all for being here, and I just want to wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time on MagnifEssence in Motion. Bye-bye.